What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. And Daniel, you and I had the absolute pleasure to be at a pretty big event for high school football in the Atlanta area this weekend, and that is the Corky Kell Classic. It was a 30th edition. You and I got to go as media members and see some of the best players in the country right here in Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, we're a college football podcast, but the lifeblood of that is recruiting. And, it was kind of just like a great, one-stop shop for just top recruits. And especially some of the games just had multiple recruits in one game that were either prospects or committed to different programs. And so that's definitely, what we want to cover. And definitely got to see some guys that we're going to be seeing on Saturdays, got to see them up close, which was definitely a benefit.
Absolutely. And we're just going to name some players that really impressed us and stood out. Some of the games we got to see Friday night, we were over at North Cobb High School. We got to see North Cobb and Beaufort, which had 16 three-star or higher recruits in that game, which is pretty incredible. And then at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday, there were 5 games. We got to see 3 of those. We saw Lowndes and Walton, North Gwinnett, and then Hoover came over from Alabama and played, and then Brookwood and Collins Hill. And so that was awesome to be at the Benz. Your first time in the Benz, which was, quite the experience considering the access we got. So
right.
super appreciative to Corky Kell for letting us be there and cover these players. Daniel, I feel like we have to start with the number one recruit in the country, and Travis Hunter. He's number one player in the 2022 class. He was behind Quinn Ewers. I've never watched Quinn Ewers play, but after watching Travis Hunter play in person, gosh, there's a reason he's the number one player in the country. He was the best high school football player that I've ever seen in person.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to say for me as well that rings true as well. I was looking, and it's just, here's the thing. We saw so many great players this weekend. We saw so many, and we saw them up close, and we had to wait because Travis Hunter was the last game of the weekend. It was that late Saturday night kick, and it was after all these other games have been delayed and gone to overtime, and we'll get into those in a minute. But Travis Hunter, his game didn't kick till like 9:30 or 10 o'clock that night. So it's just a late night. Definitely worth the wait. I can promise you there would be no eyes staying up that late. There'd be nobody left. He was the reason that anybody was left to watch. And, we'd heard all the hype. And, after seeing all those other great players, I was thinking, he's probably going to be similar. He might affect the game a little bit, but I've never seen a high school player take over in such a way that, he just made everybody around him better. And it was very apparent from like the first snap. When they ran out on the field, he just had a different presence. He had a confidence about him that, it's not just a regular, senior in high school confidence. He believes in his game, and he knows he's going to do what he's going to do. And sure enough, over 200 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns receiving, a touchdown passing when they did a wide receiver pass. He threw a touchdown. And, one of your favorite plays, Jacob, was they put him on defense at safety where he'd been at corner. He's one of the, obviously he's number one corner in the nation, but they moved him to safety, and he completely baited Dylan Lonergan, who's a 4-star quarterback, baited him into an interception. So definitely a player who, it's going to be a shame if he ever comes off the field. The fact, I don't remember seeing him come off the field except when they're kicking the extra point. That was the only time I remember seeing him not on the field. Just a special talent. And for him to go to Florida State, with their history with Dion and just everything, it's tough because you never want to compare someone to an NFL Hall of Famer, but my goodness, I don't know what the comparisons you're going to have.
Again, he's the best high school player I've ever seen. I loved that play on defense. And he is, on 24/7 Sports, he's projected as a corner. He plays both ways, and this is something that struck me. Bud Elliott of 24/7 said this, that if he came out as a wide receiver, he would also be the number one receiver and probably still number one player in the country. And that was evident on Saturday night. And again, you talk about his presence on the field. He had a swag about him, walked around with confidence. When you're playing like that, I would too, because it honestly seemed like he was just toying with everyone. And Brookwood High School is not like some low-level high school here in Georgia. Like,
yeah, they got players. I mean,
they've
they
won
got
state
guys who will
championships.
level you, they'll take you down. So
Yeah,
those were some loud hits. We're on the sideline. It was, I mean, they were getting after it. He wasn't scared. He'd go over the middle. I mean, he'd outrun people. This was a awesome experience.
I mean, he had a touchdown pass.
Yeah.
So Travis Hunter is as advertised. Florida State is getting a special player in Travis Hunter. So I'm very glad we got to see him. Daniel, I'll kick it to you. Who's another player that you feel like just, stood out on the field? One of these, recruits that we saw. What's another player that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably go with the Lowndes game with Jacuri Brown with Miami. He's he's committed to Miami. He's a 4-star quarterback. It remains to be seen if he's going to stay at quarterback. I think that he can. I think he would definitely take some development as far as kind of completing out his skill set in the passing game. But he's, as dual threat could be. He's got so many tools. But, we got to see him up close with a couple rushing touchdowns, and, they're playing Walton. Excuse me. Sorry. They're playing Walton, and it was just as the game was going on, Walton, they just a tick ahead of them. They were a tick better, and they were 2 touchdowns up. And then, I mean, he scores 2 touchdowns in the last 30 seconds. They score a touchdown, get the onside kick, and then he throws a Hail Mary pass that ends up on the 4-yard line. And then they run down and he throws a dime on the corner to the same wide receiver, number 9. Forgive me for forgetting his name right now, but that was just a spectacular play to get them to overtime. They ended up losing in overtime, but yeah, Jacuri Brown, he had 303 of the team's 366 yards. So kind of a one-man show, but he is that lifeblood of that team. So he's going to be someone that's, we definitely hear his name on Saturdays when he gets there.
He was really impressive, like you said, with his legs and in the air. Definitely the leader of that team. Big build. He's like 6'4", 205. Apparently he's been at 220. He slimmed down a little bit, but punishing as a runner, but showed the arm strength, especially that right there in the final 2 minutes with the Hail Mary. So Miami's getting a dude, if anything, for depth and a different style quarterback, which honestly, thinking about Rhett Lashley's offense,
right,
really the style play that fits Rhett Lashley's offense. And so South Georgia kid Miami's getting. I have to say, we didn't mention Travis Hunter's stats just real quick.
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh,
well, I mentioned he had over 200. I didn't give you exact.
Yeah, 232 receiving yards. That was just like
stupid.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Jacuri Brown, his stats are off the charts. So impressive player. I'll go to the Friday night game, Buford High School. Isaiah Bond. Bond played both ways. He is a Florida commit, and so when I make the comparison here, I had Florida in mind. So Kadarius Toney, and he's wearing that number 1. So it was like
you didn't want to say Percy Harvin.
Percy Harvin's one of the greatest college ball players of all time. I'm not going to make that thing, but with his speediness, his size, he's 6 foot 170. So not like tiny by any means, but smaller receiver. A lot of speed. Like he had several crossing routes where, again, he just separated himself because he's faster. Really good hands, really good body control with the way he caught some balls. And he also played corner. And so he's being recruited as an athlete. As a corner, he locked down. And North Cobb's got some guys at receiver. Right. And it was good on good. And he played a great game at corner as well. Had a couple of pass breakups. Had a really important catch late when they were trying to make their comeback run. And successfully made their comeback run, by the way. So Isaiah Bond, a Florida commit, 4-star athlete. I think, based on what I saw play him at receiver, but I'm curious to see where he projects long term. Again, if you're that skilled of a receiver, you're going to be a good corner. So,
Right.
But yeah, Isaiah Bond, Florida commit, was awesome.
They had him in the backfield too, and yeah, that was a good one. I think kind of going along that same game, Marquis Groves Killebrew. Something I noticed, he plays both ways. He's being recruited as a corner to Georgia, currently committed to Georgia, 4-star corner, but they play him at receiver as well. Denylon Morissette was out with the wrist injury. He's a 4-star receiver, also Georgia commit. So definitely a high-profile game. But with him being out, you and I both kind of keyed in. He was probably playing more offense rather than defense because they have a couple more corners on North Cobb that can kind of sustain without him. But he had a long touchdown to start the game, and then he played great, especially the first half. Towards the second half, I feel like he wore down because he was playing a lot both ways, and so that's where they kind of shifted him to primarily on offense. He got burned one time on defense, and I think that was by Isaiah Bond, and I think it was it seemed like he was maybe cramping up, which these early games, it tends to happen, especially for these guys who are the athletes that play both sides of the ball.
Right.
So it's tough, but I definitely think he passed the eye test as well, especially when you kind of narrow him down to what he's going to be. Seeing Ashton Daniels, the Stanford commit for Buford, kind of lead that charge on the comeback. That was just such a phenomenal game. Two excellent fan bases just kind of coming together for just a great Friday night game. So that one was a lot of fun. But I believe it was it 35 unanswered points by Buford in the second half to just kind of, it was 14-0 at halftime, and Buford came storming back to really lay the wood and come back. So it was a very, very fun game.
Another Buford player I'll mention that when he walked out, he looked the part, and he's only a sophomore, KJ Bolden.
Oh, yeah.
KJ Bolden, number 3 overall player in the 2024 class, which just got released, luckily Friday. So right before the game. So KJ Bolden, he's 6'1", 180, and he looked the part as a sophomore. Like, there's some players that just look good in the uniform. KJ Bolden looked really good in the uniform. Ran really clean routes from what we could tell, and had a couple caught passes. But he's someone to watch out for right now as a 4-star. But if he stays in that, top of his class, that's a kid who's going to project as a 5-star. Right. And so in the Atlanta metro area right now, he's got a couple, Georgia's warm, obviously, but he'll get offered by everybody. And in fact, he has been offered by everybody, but he's still a sophomore, long way to go in his recruitment. But KJ Bolden was super impressive. Daniel, any final? We saw Jake Pope.
I was going to mention Jake Pope from that game, being a Bama commit, but that kind of gets your eyes on him. He played a little receiver, little DB. He's projected as a safety at the next level, which was where he was playing primarily. He just seemed like a good all-around player. Like he seemed like he was just in the right place at the right time. And, it wasn't anything super spectacular as far as jumping off the page on like he didn't have an interception. He didn't have, a touchdown scored or anything like that, but he was around the ball. I think that his presence was felt by North Cobb when they were trying to drive. He made some good tackles, and I think he's just a really good leader. He's just seeing him up close. He's a good sized, ball player. So I think he's going to be great with, how Alabama likes to run their thing, their defense. Good system there for him, but he was impressive. A lot of these guys, just being able to get eyes on them. You and I are both pretty big guys just in general. So seeing these players up close and saying, okay, this guy is big. Like he's not just listed at this. He probably is that tall or that, thick. So that was good as well. Zack Roseman for Walton, he played well at quarterback. He's the App State commit. Bennett Meredith,
their running back.
Yeah, Sutton Smith played well.
Memphis commit.
He looked like we said. He looked like a Memphis running back because he's that same size and can kind of do it all. He scored the game-winning touchdown in overtime. Bennett Meredith looked impressive, and this was actually his first start. He's a quarterback for Hoover High School. Hoover was the only team outside of the state of Georgia that was part of Corky Kell. They came over, and that was a fun matchup to see a lot of their fans show up, show support. So that was fun. They played North Gwinnett, yeah, and they put it on them. So Bennett Meredith, definitely a name to know. He's a junior. So as he kind of progresses, you'll see him start to get those offers. Currently a 3-star by the composite, but I definitely expect, since he's now actually starting, that to kind of move up. He looked like he was a good sized prospect too. So suffered some drops early, but yeah, overall it was a great, great several games. I feel like there was only one blowout that we even saw. Everything else was close. And yeah, that is just funny how I think that literally if it was any other prospect, we would probably call it a night and left before that last game because it got pushed so far back. And I think everybody else probably would have done something similar. But Travis Hunter is worth the wait.
Hey, being in Atlanta, I hope we get to see him again. And we hope to do a few of these episodes during the season. So if you're a big recruiting fan, hey, we have the advantage of being in the Metro Atlanta area. And there are a lot of good players in the Metro Atlanta going to a lot of schools. And so we'll go to a couple more high school games. We'll do a couple more of these one-off episodes focused on recruiting. And hey, as big recruiting news happens, we'll have to do some recruiting episodes as well. But that will do it for this edition of The Extra Point. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. See ya.